sort of stand on love? Because we don't know any more about it than anyone else.
Basically, we decided to descend upon the streets of New York and ask people, what do they think? What is love? So let's take a look at what they had to say.
What is love?
Love is feeling completely yourself.
Love is, I have no clue.
Do you think?
It's just sharing with someone to the deepest.
I think love is our very nature, our own nature. Go ahead, Frank.
Okay. Love is the only unexplainable part about our nature that everyone possesses, I think.
Oh my God. I don't know, that gut-wrenching, irresistible pull towards somebody.
Love is understanding. I don't know.
What is love?
Love is understanding, compassion, trust, basically, good feelings towards each other.
That's a hard question, but love is when you really care about somebody, sharing, caring, and respect.
Do you think love is blind?
Yeah.
Why?
Because you don't focus on things that are negative. You don't focus on details that you normally would if you weren't in love.
I agree. Do you think love is blind?
No, I think love sees. I think we're blind. Love sees.
I agree.
Love can be very blind, I think, because I guess when you're in love with someone, you just don't see anything else in the world, and you can be really into this person without really knowing what's going on in the world and what's going on with this person too. So it can be very blind.
Yeah, it can be blind, but it can also be deaf and mute and all those other things. Particularly when it's mute, that's what I resent most.
What do you look for in love?
Passion and wisdom and security.
Just peace and just totally sharing with someone completely in everything you do. What do you look for in love?
Maturity, intelligence.
Why is love important?
It's important because it's important to love someone and to be loved. I mean, we cannot live without in relation to other people. But it's not the most important. I mean, there are a lot of other important stuff to do, and that's why I wouldn't look for love.
Do you think being in love is distracting or helpful in everyday life?
Wow. Depends on the kind of relationship. I think real love should be helpful, should be support.
I don't think there is really such thing. I think there's being in infatuation, and then there's having love, and having love doesn't distract you from everyday life, but infatuation does.
And what's the difference?
One is based in really having your needs, your daily needs met and having support, and one is based in fantasy. Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think that love should help every day.
Does it usually or not?
I think for little spurts at a time.
Oh, I think it's wonderful. In everyday life, I think being in love is a wonderful place to be always.
You don't think it's ever distracting?
I've never been distracted by it.
It can be distracting if it isn't reciprocated, but if it's reciprocated, it's only positive.
I think it's a little bit of both, don't you? I mean, sometimes it can be a little distracting if you're trying to do some work and you just sort of wander off and you think about, the person or the thing that you're in love with, and but it also sort of feeds. I think that when I've been in love and have felt the real thing, sort of everything feeds off of it, makes things better.
Do you think being in love is distracting or helpful in everyday life?
It could be both. It could be very constructive and very helpful. It can be very distractive if it's the only thing you think about, I guess.
Yeah, when people are in love or whatever, it's inspiring or something that helps them. But it's the lack of love that's truly distracting because people pursue it relentlessly.
I think it's helpful in everyday life.
How?
Because all human beings need love. It's very important. It's part of nature. Because nobody really wants to be lonely.
Helpful or distracting in everyday life?
I think it's helpful. You can achieve, not only for yourself, but for your partner. Like, if you want any certain goals, I think.
It's helpful.
How?
It's helpful because it makes the day go by easier thinking about who you're in love with. And
That sounds distracting to me.
it's not distracting because it makes you feel better, so your work be better, and you'll see it in your work, depends on what you do.
I think it's wonderful. I don't know whether it's distracting or helpful, but I love to be in love.
Yeah.
It's great.
never been.
It's great energy.
So it's helpful.
It's totally
Well,
helpful.
it is, because I kind of dig that, agree, because like being in love is wonderful and everything, but I think it could be distracting if you stepped out of love. If you're in love and you stepped out of love and looked at your life, you'd probably say, I could do a lot more at my life right now, but I'm so in love with being in love, that's what I'm doing. And that's exactly what I'm doing, And I feel like if I wasn't in love, I'd be like
Productive.
very productive, yeah.
How many times do you want to be in love from now on for the rest of your lifetime?
Once.
Like 4.
No, you got an exact number.
As many times as possible. I don't know. Once. One really good one would be nice.
So only one more. You wouldn't want more than one more time?
Well, I think I'd like it to be once more, but then, well, when that relationship doesn't work out, then we pick up our things and move on and hope that the next one works out.
I guess right now I'd settle for maybe 2 more times.
And you?
Well, God, I think I have been about 9 times, 9 to 30, and I guess I'd say I'm about done.
No more time?
Well,
You're in love now?
well, for lack of a better description, yes.
I'd like about 3 more.
Why?
Well, 3 is one of my lucky numbers. The other one is 7. That's too big. And I think, so by the time I'm 33, I hope to have found the right one. So that gives me what? Another love every other year.
Constantly. I just never want not to be in love.
True.
With one person or a few people?
I don't know. I think that quality, you can be in love, just be in love, and then people come in and out of your life.
Have you ever been in love?
Yeah.
How many times?
Maybe 2 real times.
And how many more times would you like to be in love before you die?
1 will be enough.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I like that. Yeah.
How many times have you been in love?
Once.
And you want one more time?
Oh, it depends. I'll give it a try, I guess.
If it's one-on-one love, as many times as you don't break up or do break up with somebody, you should have somebody all the time that you're in love with. And otherwise, the other kind of love, which is more compassion, should be for as many people as you can handle.
Well, let's see, maybe 3 times?
How many times have you been in love already?
Once.
So 2 more times?
I guess, yeah.
Why 2 more times?
I don't know. I feel usually if you meet somebody, you're not really sure if that's the person for you. Because you can be dating somebody for a long time and then everything can go in the garbage. So then you have to move on.
How many times do you want to be in love?
I think it should be once, but I already lost that first one, and I haven't got it over with it yet, and it's been 2 years, so it's not like something that you can actually put away or anything. I think it's forever, really. That's how I felt, and I'm disappointed that it's not forever.
Do you think most people were conceived out of love?
Most people, God. Definitely not.
No, I don't think so. I think you can tell when someone is.
How?
Have a glow or something. That love child glow. I do, I think so.
Oh, yeah, I would say no. No?
I don't think so. Definitely not.
Why not?
I think a lot of people are accidents, you know?
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. Just imagine if those who were conceived in love are like all the special and talented, wonderful people around us, and all like the horrible people are people conceived out of love, or even out of who knows what, you know, out of whatever.
Wedlock.
Yeah, out of wedlock. Out of love lock.
No, I'd like to think so, but I know probably not.
Why not?
Because so many people get married and the marriages don't last and they're not really in love.
Yeah, I would, or they just happen out of lust, you know, which isn't love.
Do you think most people were conceived out of love?
No.
Why?
A lot of sex going around.
Conceived out of love? You mean they're a product of love, or that it's truly their intent? No, I think it's far more haphazard.
No.
Why not?
I think that young people who have children haven't developed enough to really understand what a love is. They're operating out of other needs, ego needs, hormonal needs, sexual needs, and that really has very little to do with love.
What was the question?
Do you think most people were conceived out of love?
No, I think most people when they're young don't know what love is. They know, unless you say sexual passion is love, which I don't think.
Yes, most people.
Why?
Oh boy. Well, that's a hard question. Yeah, because I figure when most people are together making love, and the end product that comes out of it is a baby, and that's usually from an act of love.
No, I don't think so.
Why?
There's a lot of people, they, how you say that? They don't protect themselves as they should, and usually results in, having kids, and they should protect themselves, and most people don't, and there's a lot of sex going on, you know, so I don't think it's that much love to do with it, you know.
Do you think anything can interfere with true love as it did, for an example, with Romeo and Juliet, feuding families, etc.?
Wow, that's a tough one. Part of me wants to say that when it's true, part of what makes it true is that it was meant to be, and so forces separate to let it happen, but now I don't know.
Can anything interfere with it? Well, I guess, I don't know. When you use sort of, expressions like true love, it's difficult to answer, but I'd say no.
I'd say yes. I think that it depends on circumstance. It depends on how self-sacrificing people are and how obligated they feel to their obligations or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
a racial issue, sometimes it depends. Like, if you're in New York and you're doing your own sort of independent thing, it's a lot easier to deal with social issues, but not everybody does live in New York, and I think in more middle America or wherever else in America that what Romeo and Juliet is a social issue, and those issues are still very existent today. And if you don't choose to go out with somebody who's kind, then you're going to deal with a lot of outside pressure. Maybe you'll even deal with it if the person is similar to you, depending on how accepting your family is of that person's personality. I mean, regardless of their financial status or their color or whatever else. Yeah, these issues are very prevalent still.
Yes. Society,
I think financial stability, even though you really love a person, in these days and times, without a culture behind it, if you just think love is all of that, without financial stability, I think will hurt it a little bit. But true love will always be there, but you might not be together. You just love each other.
Yeah, I mean, if it's really true love, I think nothing can really stop it from happening. I mean, I'm pretty optimistic on that one.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's not love if you have all these other barriers in the way that you create for yourself.
No, definitely not.
Yo, in this day and age, anything can interfere with anything. Yeah.
Yeah, fear. Fear can interfere. Would you like to know that?
What do you mean?
Well, if you allow the outside world to influence you, if you're scared of giving everything, you lose your strength.
Yeah, scared of just being vulnerable and losing yourself, I guess.
Do you think anything can interfere with true love, as it did, for example, with Romeo and Juliet, like feuding families, etc.?
Oh, definitely. I think that it can't stop the love, but it can distract the mind so that you're confused and don't understand who you are or why you are. And if you get confused, then it's very difficult and you just stop loving yourself, and very difficult to love anybody else. And it's not an end of the love, but it's a confusion of the mind.
Well, unfortunately, love is very powerful, but there are things that are more powerful in our society today that can distract anybody from love. In fact, it makes it very difficult for people to follow it.
Example?
Well, I don't know of anybody particularly in the public eye, of course, except Hollywood personalities who can't ever fall in love because they don't know who they're loving.
Do you think people fall in love because of good sex?
Oh, I think it's an important part of it, but I think that that's not the reason they fall in love.
What's the reason people fall in love?
No. Well, I think it's because they have they find something in the other person that matches with them and their rhythms and their vibrations, and something that they see in another person, maybe a reflection of themselves, or maybe something that they admire and want to be with, and something that makes them feel good, and something that makes them happy.
I think it's a matter of if you find something compatible, they have the same beliefs, they've lived a little bit the same kind of life you've led before you met them. You understand what they're about because you're about the same thing. So these are the things that, give you a tie to the other person.
I think that's one of the reasons, but
what's another?
People fall in love because they get along really, really well too. It could be either or.
Yeah, I don't think they fall in love because of it. I think what makes it so good is if they are in love.
What makes people fall in love?
I tend to think it's timing. It's like what you need at a certain time if somebody is that.
I agree.
Oh, I would say a convergence of forces, as my therapist would say. Wait, what was the question again?
What makes people fall in love?
What makes people fall in love? Right, a convergence of forces, timing and spiritual match and psychological, emotional needs, a lot of stuff.
Well, my opinion is if two people are in love and they're committed to each other, that's great, fantastic. But in human nature, we're not perfect, man and woman. Somebody else could interfere with the relationship, and usually that can destroy relationships just because of human nature. Maybe that person's more attractive or whatever. That usually happens.
Why do you think people fall in love?
I guess it starts from, well, let's say you meet somebody, you're attracted to them physically, naturally, and then what comes later is usually what's inside. That's most important.
Do you think people fall in love because of good sex?
Not really. No.
No, I don't think you could fall in love because of good sex. No. But it's usually what, like he said, inside. I think. Like myself, I never experienced love before, but once I started going out with this person, I opened myself more to the person, and I found out,
Why did it end?
Why did it end? Well, just like you see something and you want it, and it pushes you away from the person you're with. I wanted to hang out here a lot. That's one thing, and I was meeting different people and everything. Plus, family gets involved too. They might not feel the same way as you feel about the person, and that gives you another excuse to break up.
Do you think people fall in love because of good sex?
I don't know, fall in love. I think it can,
It sure helps.
it helps. And it can sort of exaggerate the feeling of love, I think. And
What are other reasons people fall in love?
I'm usually in love with someone who sees me the way I want to be seen. So sort of a reflection of the self, and then an appreciation of the person as their own entity as well. I don't know.
I don't think sex and love. I think sex is the lowest kind of love there is.
Why?
Because, well, it's great, but I'm saying, like, I think there's sex, then there's love, and then there's compassion, and then when you're at that point, you just keep on giving, and it just keeps coming back.
Wait, what was the question again?
Do you think good sex equals love? Do you think people fall in love because of good sex?
Yeah, I'd fall in love because of good sex. But I kind of agree that sex is, like, as far as showing your love, there's so many other ways. There's other ways to feel love, and there's so many other things to manifest, have love in with somebody. And, well, no, it's not the lowest, it's like the highest thing, but there's so many things before that to be in love. But wait, I think I went off the question.
Probably partly, but it's probably not the only thing either.
Why do people...
Too much other important things around that.
Like what?
Well, like living together and sharing ideas and things like that. Which, it's almost more important than sex. Sex is good if you have good relation.
And why do people fall in love?
Companionship, colleagues. My grandparents, I remember, always used to say, looking at each other skeptically. My grandfather would say, we've been married 54 years, it feels like 55. And my grandmother would say something like, I think married people can just tolerate more than others. And, it's a lot of compromise.
Am I in love now? I'd say yes.
And how do you know?
How do I know? I guess I feel mostly satisfied.
For how long?
2.5 years.
And you still want to be in love 3 more times?
3 years. Yeah, I want to be in love with somebody else now.
I am in love.
How did you know when you were in love?
A tickling feeling, and it came back to me the same way.
People, even falling in love is some kind of a conditioning.
Yes.
Why not rise in love? It hurts when you fall,
Do you think being in love is distracting or helpful in everyday life?
Helpful.
How?
Because you feel strong with everything, and if you lose your fear, then you lose your fear with everything. And it just feels right.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Do you think being in love is distracting or helpful in everyday life?
Helpful, definitely. You're a happier person, and you love yourself more, you love everyone more, and just things run more smoothly.
How many times have you been in love?
Once.
Never.
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 Are you in love now?
No.
I am in love. Right there.
So what kind of love lasts longer? The love for your pet or a romantic love?
It depends, doesn't it? It depends on your pet, and it depends upon the other partner that you're in love with.
The pet is less complicated, so it's easier to maintain a sense of love. When the pet is not being confrontational and the parents don't care about the pet, and, you don't have to make weekend plans with the pet, aside from the dog run, it's easy to retain a sense of love, right? Because you don't bicker with the pet.
Yes, you do.
Well, if the pet's not sitting, but you know, it's a more simplistic sense of bickering. So in other words, the mundane aspects of life can be very harmful to the, romantic notions of love.
So you haven't seen much of us through this show because, well, we have no idea what love is either. But actually, I don't think I've learned any more about what love is.
I definitely haven't. I have no clue, just like when we started the show.
Yeah, it's completely subjective. But, okay, well, we'd like to hear what you have to say about it. Our number is 260-1602.
And we'd love to hear your comments. And we decided to end the show a little differently. We'd like to end with someone else saying something. So let's take a look at what this man had to say. And I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next time on Clear World.
Right.
The strongest love is compassion. And it's a compassion for all the weak and the suffering in the world, of which it mostly is. And our world is not geared toward that. It looks for people who are powerful, who are killers, who run armies and run all the destruction in the world, and there's very little room for compassion.
Do you have one that we liked?
Oh, I think so, but we could do
Same
another one. Mm-hmm. We started with the end, remember?
No.
We could do one more.
When you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a nurse for a short time.
I want to be a baseball player.
And what do you do now?
I'm an actress.
And I'm a writer.
Why aren't you doing what you wanted to do?
Well, I realized that I wasn't selfless enough, and I think that there was a part of me that always wanted to be an actress because I always acted the same way when I was little that I do now. So.
Yeah, and I realized I couldn't hit the long ball, and I was just too slow. So, and I guess sports is one of those things that you realize really early on whether you have it or not.
So, Christina, what is the worst job you've ever had?
The one that comes to mind right away is something called a parking PA, and it's for the movies. It consists of you sitting alone in a car for at least 12 hours, usually in the dead of night, guarding the street so that nobody parks there. So the next morning when the camera trucks arrive, they have parking. What about you? What's the worst job you ever had?
No, I can't. I've had so many, I can't even pick one out. Possible. So, as you've probably figured out, this week's topic is career aspirations. I'm Alex.
My name is Christina, and you've just tuned into Clear World. And we really wanted to find out if people are happy with what they're doing for a living.
Right, and also we asked them If education was free, higher education especially, how far would they go? Okay, so let's see what they have to say. When you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Me? A doctor?
Why?
Because that's what my mother wanted.
What about you?
A war hero.
Why?
Because I believe I was a warrior in the past, so I got to keep going.
What job do you have now?
Right now, I work as a reservationist in international tours.
I'm a mechanic, and I used to be a Marine.
And why aren't you doing what you wanted to do when you were little?
Basically, because it wasn't my dream, it was my mother's dream. So.
What about your own dreams when you were little?
My own dreams, I wanted to become a dancer, and, you know, I wasn't able to pursue that. Because at that time, my mother, you know, she had power over me, so I wasn't able to pursue that.
And how come you're not doing what you wanted to do when you're...
Out of wars. That's it.
Why aren't you doing what you wanted to do as a child?
Don't have the connections to get into it.
What do you mean by connections?
If I wanted to be a private detective, I'd have to know someone, you know, or...
Anybody could be a private detective.
Well, I suppose I haven't been good at it. I've never done it before. I wouldn't know how to go about getting into it.
There are schools for it.
You just didn't want to do it. You
Yeah.
didn't follow through.
Didn't follow through with my dream. Yeah, probably.
Is there any particular reason that you didn't, why you didn't follow through?
My parents thought I should go to school and get, you know, a good job, quote, good job, which is probably what I'm doing right now. I mean, they're very happy with that.
And why aren't you doing what you wanted to do as a child?
Well, I don't know. It kind of, the reality hits you. You have to, you know, you go through the process. You go through high school. You go through college. And essentially, what they do is they filter you down to the point where you're marketable, where you know you'll fit in somewhere. Especially because there is such a huge emphasis on having a good career. And usually, that means like making you know, $50,000 and hanging out with your family, and you know, it kind of it makes these lines that you have to fit in between. So it's just the older you grow, the more narrow your options seem to be.
When you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Musician.
Why?
Everybody in my family was doing it, and I started early.
I wanted to make pizza.
Come on.
I didn't know what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a fireman, actually. That's what I wanted to be.
What job do you have now?
Making pizza.
And why aren't you doing what you wanted to do as a child?
Well, I sort of am, but it doesn't keep a roof over my head. The money right now doesn't happen, so.
And why aren't you doing what you wanted to do as a child? Be a fireman?
Because I haven't gone to school. I haven't had any training.
If education was free, economically speaking, how far would you go?
I would go all the way, probably 4 years and then 3 years. I'd consider probably being a doctor, you know.
So, what's stopping you from doing that now?
Right now, at this point, I'm still at a 4-year college, and I still plan to do the same thing. It just depends what school I'm going to go to. And it's also a big question if I'm ever going to do that, because of economic reasons.
If education was free, how far would you go?
With learning, you mean? Till I knew everything.
Why?
Why? Because I have an insatiable appetite.
And if higher education was free, how far would you go?
I would go all the way.
If education was free, how far would you go? How high would you go?
I'd probably have gotten my master's.
In what?
English and theater, music.
And what would you have done with that?
Gain more knowledge for myself.
If education was free, how far would you go? How high would you go?
Well, I went through high school, and I probably would be in school right now, just learning what I want to be.
If education was free, how far would you go?
Probably take classes till I died. You know.
Why?
I like to learn new things. I have this need to quest after knowledge. I want to see everything I can see, do everything I can do.
It seems like people are definitely interested in pursuing education, especially if it's free and available. Almost every single person that we spoke to would definitely pursue education.
Right, and imagine the effect on society. If everybody were availed the opportunity to realize their fullest potential and capabilities.
It's an interesting concept. I mean, what if everyone in our society were fully educated?
Or at least had free access to education. For sure it would undermine ignorance and violence, et cetera, you know, all that stuff. So we asked people what they thought the effect of a free education would be on society.
So let's take a look at what they had to say about that.
If higher education was available to everybody, how do you think that would affect society?
Drastically. It really would. I guess there would just be, I mean, I think in every way it would affect society. There would more be like a middle and an upper class. It wouldn't be a lower class, or just a working class. There wouldn't be a working class, and that would affect our society as a whole, like drastically.
I'm not quite sure. You know, my knee-jerk reaction would be the same answer that Vesna gave, but in a sense, lower education, you know, or like, is available to a lot of people. And for whatever reason, not everybody takes advantage of it. And maybe it's not, the answer's not just in making higher education available. Maybe it's something else. I don't know what that answer is, but I think you have to start at the bottom first. You have to get people to the point where they have the option of saying, okay, do I want to go to college or not? But I think there are too many people who haven't even gotten that far, you know, of saying, well, now, should I go to college or shouldn't I?
Why do you think that is?
You know, I guess getting, you know, making this sort of like a circle discussion, maybe it is related to the fact that certain people aren't getting enough higher education, and there's not enough people put in a position where they could help other people.
If higher education was available to everyone, how do you think that would affect society?
I think it would just increase the need to get your master's or BA, you know. I mean, I see that already now. A BA just doesn't mean as much as it used to.
Yeah, the people that, you know, if the people that used to go to college back in the 40s and 50s that got their undergraduate degree, that was always more than enough. And what happens is the people with the money will always create a new level where they're gonna keep other people out. So.
If higher education was available to everyone, how do you think that would affect society?
I think you get a lot more thoughtful people that would care a lot more, maybe work better together.
If higher education was available to everybody, how do you think that would affect society?
Well, I don't think a lot of people would take advantage of the situation, because some people, I think, just don't want any more education and just aren't interested.
Why not?
A lot of people are lazy. A lot of people don't want to bust their ass, I guess.
But actually, the less education you have, the more you bust your ass. Isn't that true?
Yeah, but, you know, physically, I guess you can. I mean, you either have a hard ass or a hard head. Or
If comprehensive higher education was available to everybody, how do you think that would affect society?
I think society would set a higher limit, a higher goal. You know, if everybody could do an A in math, then society would put an A plus or an A plus.
Productivity, you know? On everything, as far as
you know,
world trade and everything, and the American standards and American people itself will go up.
Everything would be higher. Goals, achievements, everything, price, whatever.
Do you think that would lessen violent crime and many of the things going on like that today?
Definitely. I think education is the key factor to that. You got to get everybody, especially like when I was a kid, you had Little League, baseball, and you had all that kind of stuff. You had coaches, you had people putting into those funds.
Need motivation for kids.
Like, you got to have something to do, otherwise you're going to be in trouble. You know what I mean? I'm a true believer in that.
Yeah. Do you think higher education is a right or a privilege?
I mean, it's a given right to everybody, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody should be able to do that, but they can't, you know, because of economic reasons or some other reasons.
And do you think higher education should be a right or a privilege?
It should be a right.
Definitely should be a right. You know, you should have the choice of whether you want it or not, and if you do, there shouldn't be factors hindering, you know, your ability to do that.
Do you think higher education is a right or a privilege?
I think for most people it's a privilege. I don't know. Although there are ways to get around it, I guess. I see it as more of a privilege because I see people that can't afford to go.
Do you think it should be a right or a privilege?
I think it should be right, definitely. I think everyone should have that chance.
Yeah, I think it's become such a necessity that everyone, basically, if you want to, you know, your options are extremely limited in what you can do with yourself if you can't get in the front door somewhere. And a lot of times that means a college degree, which is, you know, anybody that's graduated college can tell you what a joke that is.
Do you think higher education is a right or a privilege?
Ideally, it's a right. It's set up as a privilege in this society, I think.
Do you think it should be a right or a privilege?
It should be a right.
Definitely, most definitely should be a right.
Do you think higher education is a right or a privilege?
It's a right.
It's a right for everybody.
It's a right.
So as you can see, people agree that education is a right. For one thing, it's natural desire to want to understand the world around us, don't you think?
Definitely, I think society could gain from more education. This next section, we are going to open with a piece of animation. This animated piece is a story about the trials and tribulations and aspirations of an amoeba.
Next, we ask people to define what the word success means to them. All right, so let's take a look.
Hey! Who do you think you're looking at, creep? Oh, me, huh? Everyone laughs at the little blob. Well, I'll tell you something, man. I got feelings, too. Yeah. You know how hard it is to be a one-celled creature, the lowest life form on Earth? You think I get off on splitting in two? No. I don't even tickle. All I ever wanted was a real life. You know, living out in the big field, the wind blowing in the air, maybe a nice house, a wife with long hair, wearing a nice dress. Then we could have some nice children to run around in the field. I can't take it, you hear me? My better half, wherever you are. Goodbye. What other stupid thing could I do now? No, you just couldn't be happy alone. You had to bring us all into this misery.
If you had to choose for the rest of your life, would you prefer to work with your head or your hands?
It's my head.
Why?
I don't know, I just would, I mean.
Same question. Would I prefer to... what about the other ones? Okay, I prefer working with my head, but there's definitely some therapeutic benefits to working with your hands. And would I prefer? I would say my head. Does it mean I'd have to be tied up or something? I couldn't move? Oh, really? I guess you could do more with your head, so you could accomplish more with your head, so I guess I would have to say with my head.
What do you mean you can do more with your head?
Well, I guess what you do in your head, right, is That's what accomplishes all the big breakthroughs in the world, right? And it's the geniuses that set the precedent, and then after that, the work of the genius becomes the work of the tinsmith, as they say, in that the person, after that, it's like you don't even have to think. So it's important to have the people who think to set the precedent, to set things,
Thinking people aren't all geniuses. You don't have to be a genius to think.
This is true.
Do you think most people who perform manual labor for their entire life do it because they want to?
Because they want to and because they have to. They don't have another choice.
You think it's mostly because they want to or because they have to?
I'd say 50-50, I don't think I could decide on that.
Similar answer. I know plenty of people who do it because they want to, but there are a lot out there who do it because they have to, definitely. So probably more because they have to, and some because they want to.
Do you prefer working with your head or your hands?
Right now I work with my hands, but if you want to make money in this world, you're going to have to work with your head. Later on, when I get the experience, you go with your head.
I personally think that you have to work with your hands and, work with your hands and save with your mind?
Yeah, no, hands will feed you, but
your
with
brain.
your head is going to make you well, you know what I mean?
It's going to say you save money with your head. Is that what your boss said, something like that? I don't know.
Do you think most people who perform manual labor for their entire life do it because they want to?
No, it's the situation that they fall in. They don't want to exceed. Like right now, I'm a mechanic, but I got other goals. So right now, I'm going to have to because I want to put food on the table. After that, you move on. Otherwise, you stay in the same place.
I think it's a little both. I think that if you fall in that position, fine. But if you settle for that, then that's your fault. If you settle for whatever it is you fell into and you decide to stay in there, that's your fault.
Do you think society has something to do with that decision?
It does.
It does in a way, but
you should be stronger. You should be a stronger individual and try the hardest you can to achieve that, to overcome that, whatever it may take. Just go over it. There are a lot of hills, a lot of mountains in this life that may stop a few of us, but then others keep going. Then the next one may stop half of that group, and then others keep going. It's up to you. It's up to you.
What does the word success mean to you?
Happiness within your own definition. Happiness within your own state of mind.
What makes you happy?
Happy? What makes me happy is a clean house, kids, a good man, and money in the bank for their college education.
Yeah, same here.
What if education was free? Then what would the money in the bank be for?
Then I guess it would be for our retirement or a Mercedes.
No, when you I believe you got to have all your toys, before you go, have all your little toys.
Toys, Mercedes.
Let's say you already had all the toys. What would success mean to you at that point?
Having kids and passing on down the education and the stuff that you believe in.
Beliefs.
You know what I mean? And watch them grow up and become somebody also.
Yeah.
Breaking the goal from poverty to somebody. I think that's the best.
Good characteristics,
no matter,
good morals. That's success.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you think most people who perform manual labor for their entire life do it because they want to?
No.
Why not?
They don't have the education to get an easier job, so a lot of people just bust their ass every day.
Yeah, what's the question?
Do you think most people who perform manual labor for their entire life do it because they want to?
Some do it because they want to, and some do it just because that's all they have to do.
Do you think someone should have to drive a bus for their whole life? Or do you think at some point they should be given an opportunity to get an education so that they can choose something else that may not be physical?
Yeah, I think that they should have an opportunity to. A lot of people are happy just driving a bus, though. No change. But I think the opportunity should be available.
Will you be happy making peace for the rest of your life, or would you like to do something else?
I'd like to do something else, move on.
Do you prefer working with your head or your hands?
Both, probably. I mean, I would. Yeah, I mean, I'm not an artist or anything. I'm not very good with my hands, but I don't know.
I definitely prefer working with my head.
Why?
I don't know. I think that's where it's a greater strength of mine. I'm not too talented with my hands.
Do you think most people who perform manual labor for their entire life do it because they want to?
I think some people do, some people don't. Some people that maybe that's how they didn't grow up with, the kind of advantages that society says, they couldn't afford to go to school, or, maybe they didn't have any other choice, but I think most people would rather not.
Yeah, I think, well, if you don't go to a university or something, a lot of times what they do is they say, well, your safe investment for a career choice is trade school, which is, and that's where a lot more people are going these days, because they realize that 4-year college education just doesn't really amount for anything.
Since manual labor is tough on the body, do you think it would be a good idea for young people to perform manual labor in exchange for education? So as they grow older, they can convert over to a non-physical occupation.
I don't think it'd be that important, no.
Could you say the question again? What was it?
Since manual labor is tough on the body, in other words, you think someone should have to drive a bus for 50 years? Or do you think that at some point they should be availed of a...
They could be able to work, get out of that kind of position and get into something a little less visible. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a good alternative. I don't see any way that they're going to make it happen, that it can happen in the way the system's set up now. And yeah, there's, look at West Virginian coal miners. These people, they have like black lung, like two out of 3 die from black lung, I can't say that, they get up in the morning and go, all right, I get to go work with my hands today. So, yeah, I mean, people get trapped into situations because of the economics.
What does the word success mean to you?
Happiness.
And what does that mean?
Well, if a person's happy, then I believe that they're having success in their life.
Well, how do you attain and maintain happiness and success?
By being true to you. It's a feeling, you know when you're happy. It's like when you're...
Practically speaking, how do you define success in your life?
When I'm doing what I want to do and I'm being true to myself and not doing something that I feel wrong when I'm doing.
Yeah, happiness also, and I find my voice, and I found my voice through writing, and that's the best feeling in the world, knowing that you're happy doing something and that you can communicate with the world in a way that could be understood on your terms, so to speak, and that's how I feel I'm successful. The act of creating something out of nothing and then giving it to the world and to be understood means I'm successful.
What does the word success mean to you?
Having a good job a good husband, children.
What do you mean by good?
Good husband, understanding and loyal.
Good job.
Trustworthy. Good job, meaning that I'll end up enjoying to do it, not having to go to work every single morning with so much pressure and hating it. Just enjoying to spend somewhere 9 hours a day.
The success question? I guess my definition of it is changed, and it's different than, I guess, a personal satisfaction that you've done what you wanted to do.
When we started this show, we were hoping to find a lot of inspired people, and what we found were a lot of people who were really unhappy in the jobs that they were doing. And there's nothing more frustrating to me than meeting a lot of bright people who aren't given the opportunity to realize their potential.
That's right, and let's face it, a lack of education, comprehensive education that is, can only lead to a lack of choices. And more often than not, a lack of choices leads to frustration and anger. All right, so we wanted to end the show with a quote. It's by an actress. Her name is Myrna Loy. It goes, "Life is not about having and getting. It's about being and becoming."
Something to think about for sure. Well, that's our show, Clear World, for this week, and we welcome you to call with your comments, as always. Our telephone number is 260-1602. And please tune in next week. We'll see you then.